Good day, everyone. Richard Cowperthwait for Northwest Access TV. Thanks for joining us today. We're doing another one of our series of interviews with candidates running in contested races in Franklin County. Local candidates with the November 8th election getting ever closer. Voting, most folks hopefully have had gotten their ballots in the mail. So voting between now and November 8th. And, well, I was hoping to be talking to the three candidates for Franklin County Sheriff, but we have two of them here, and I appreciate their presence. John Grismore and Gail Messier.
Thank you, Richard.
The candidate we're missing is Mark Lauer. Mark certainly was invited, got the word from him earlier that he would make it, but he is not here. But for the record, he certainly was invited. Of course, Mark and Gail are the two write-in candidates. John Grismore, the candidate who's now the one name on the ballot. I guess a little background is probably in order here just to kind of set the stage for this. It looked like early on that the contest for sheriff, it wasn't even a contest, it looked like it was going to be a really ho-hum election. John Grismore, the only candidate who filed, and indeed, when people get their ballots, the only candidate again on the ballot. John having he ran as a Republican. John, of course, won the Republican nomination and also won the Democratic nomination on write-in votes.
That's correct.
And again, seemed like one candidate, nothing much to talk about, but things changed big time on August 7th. And I interviewed John a couple weeks ago about this, so I won't go into this too much, but just to set the stage, again, August 7th, the incident at the Sheriff's Department, a combative person from St. Albans Town brought into custody, two deputies having a tough time dealing with them, and you got involved, and the situation got a lot of attention. Video came out pretty quickly anyway. Sheriff's Department conducting an internal investigation, I guess, by Mark Lauer, who's not with us today. And you ended up getting suspended with pay initially and then fired a couple weeks down the road. And then, again, the incident, the video came out, got a lot of attention. The Franklin County Democratic and Republican committees got together, and a number of people calling for you to withdraw from the race, something which you obviously didn't do. And they agreed on a candidate. They came together and supported Mark Lauer, still, I guess, a lieutenant with the Sheriff's Department. And then Gail Messier jumped into the race as well as another write-in candidate. So again, here we are, three candidates running, two write-in candidates, John Grismore, the only candidate on the ballot. Gail, out of curiosity, I'm sure if Mark were here, I would have said, far be it for me to speak for Mark, but I'm sure some of his supporters were not happy with your candidacy. Nothing I have to tell you. And I'm sure some of Mark's supporters probably see you or saw you as a potential spoiler candidate. I'm sure you don't see it that way. But who jumped in first?
I think I jumped in first.
So interesting. So you think you jumped in before Mark did?
You know, I talked to Jay Sweeney and told him that I was running.
Interesting. So for folks who see you, again, it's obviously tough to pull off a write-in campaign. Right. It happens. But for Lauer supporters who see you as a spoiler, you obviously don't see it that way.
No, I don't see it that way. I bet, you know.
And give us some background. Let's start with
because I ran for sheriff back in 2010.
Okay.
Against Bob Norris.
Against Bob Norris.
Bob beat me, but I think I drew 42% of the vote back then.
And of course, your twin brother Dale, of course, served a couple.
He served 12 years as sheriff. In
3 terms as sheriff.
So, yeah, he's been sheriff. I think he lost the office in 1999. Yeah.
Okay. So you ran against Norris in 2010.
2010. Right?
Interesting.
I won the Republican nomination back in 2010.
Okay. Interesting.
So I threw my hat back in, and I figured, make these guys spend some money.
Yeah. And again, you've got an extensive law enforcement background.
I got over 20 years as a military police, and I served overseas as a military police overseas. I did all the jobs as a military police, investigation, patrol supervisors, and then when I retired from the Army, I went to work full-time for the Chittenden County Sheriff Department. I'm a certified police officer and a field training officer for the Chittenden County Sheriff Department. And I did every job there were with the Chittenden County Sheriff Department. And Sheriff McLaughlin was a good sheriff. He taught me what I needed to know.
Yeah, interesting. And again, did you think about running for sheriff? Again, in Roger Longevin, I think a lot of people were surprised. I think a lot of people expected Roger to run for a second term at least, but decided not to do that. Again, before the incident in question, John, of course, was the key number 2 guy in the department, the captain. Did you think about?
No, I didn't think about it until I saw the video. And, My brother-in-law, Leonard, told me, Gail, all the people who knew you are gone now.
Yeah.
Because, my age, but now I just decided to jump in and see what I can do.
Interesting. And again, your reaction to the video sounds like it was along the lines of some other people. So you weren't impressed by what you saw?
No, I wasn't. I thought it could have been de-escalated.
Yeah. John, we had an earlier interview, which I'm sure some folks saw, but you want to just go back and can you just succinctly touch on that? I'm thinking a lot of folks out there, what they know about the sheriff's races, you were the only candidate for a while. The incident happens, the video comes out, and the reaction, obviously, you acknowledge the video looked bad, even while saying you felt you handled it appropriately. You want to just touch on, can you briefly touch on that? Is that tough for just people who saw that video and say, how could Chris Moore act like, can you touch on that briefly?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, obviously,
and I mean briefly. I want to move on to other stuff. But just for folks who, that's all they know about this.
It's a very complex issue, right? It took us a long time to get through when you and I got together the last time. But certainly, I mean, the bottom line was I was defending myself from being spit upon and defending another deputy from the potential of being spit upon. I mean, that's the bottom line. And I used the minimum amount of force necessary to effect creating some space and time between him and myself, and a maneuver using my foot to try to keep my face away from his face. Certainly because he had demonstrated some spitting behaviors before. He spat on the floor, he spat on the cruiser, he spat on deputies and tried to spit on them at other times, making contact with spit on one of the deputies' face such that, it was described that it was running down his face. Yeah. So that was obviously a very big concern.
And this person did get criminal charges out of the incident.
He did.
Okay. I should also note in the wake of this, of course, state police launched an investigation. And
Correct.
Again, I should note we're taping the show on Tuesday, October 4th. I had an interview actually with the two candidates for state's attorney yesterday. We taped it on October 3rd, John Lavoie, now the state's attorney, and the challenger, Zach Waite. Not Zach Wright. Messenger I think his name is Zach Wright for the record, Zach Waite. And John Lavoie, I asked him, and again, they felt strongly, they both felt you should have withdrawn from the race. But as far as the investigation is concerned, as of when I talked to John Lavoie, October 3rd, he had no information from state police. Right. So
and that's very peculiar. I mean, you've got two people running for the senior law enforcement position in the county that are making prejudicial, assumptions, right? They didn't have all the facts and circumstances when both of them made comments that I should withdraw. Yeah. And you would think of all people, they would be the ones to at least afford me the opportunity to speak before they pass judgment, So certainly that's alarming and concerning. But, again, I stand behind what I did. It was a defensive maneuver to stop an assault. And that's something that people have a hard time seeing, have a hard time understanding. And I can certainly appreciate that, and we talked about this before, that law enforcement is a very dynamic thing these days. And there's a lot of moving parts.
I guess kind of the related issue, criticism that's come up is, and again, we appreciate you talking to us here on Northwest Access TV, but it was a long time. It was over a month after the incident, and you certainly have been criticized. Why did it take you so long to comment? We talked about that on the show, but can you go into that a little bit?
Absolutely.
And hindsight, obviously, 2020. Wouldn't it have been smarter just early on to have said, believe me, you'll hear my side of this at some point, but I can't comment now, instead of just total silence for over a month, which certainly seemed to hurt you?
Sure. So again, we have departmental policies that prohibit us from talking about internal investigations while they're being conducted. Yeah. That's why I was quiet. I would have loved to have defended myself, and I said this when you and I spoke the last time. That was the toughest thing, is really believing in my heart that I was in the right, and that to participate in just such horrible vilification treatment from my own department, and how that investigation, quote unquote investigation, transpired was very challenging, and I absolutely would have loved to take the opportunity to defend myself. However, and I've conducted lots of internal investigations, in my time, and the underlying rule is that you don't talk about them. And so I don't know, other people in the department talked about it. There was a press release, there was video release, there was a lot of things that were done that shouldn't have been done, to ensure the integrity of that internal investigation. However, I was abiding by that. And so that's why it took me so long. The investigation, although I was interviewed and terminated on the 18th, the investigation wasn't of August. Yep, the investigation wasn't concluded until the 24th. We didn't get the report until
the sheriff's the internal
their
investigation.
internal investigation wasn't concluded until the 24th. We didn't get the report until the 2nd. It was a 3-ring binder, lots of
2nd.
statements. Yep, September
About a month
2nd.
ago.
Lots of stuff to go through. So that also took some time to go through and digest it, understand exactly what the investigation identified, what it didn't identify. And we identified a tremendous amount of issues with that, which again I've talked about that we will release that at a later point in time. I don't want to waste Mr. Messier's time with this, but certainly there are some challenges that we had with that entire process as well. But again, the bottom line is we have policies. I was abiding by those policies. I would have loved to have spoken a lot sooner. Absolutely.
Yeah. Gail, any thoughts on what John just said? Obviously,
No,
you're not
not really.
involved,
Just what is an assault in your book, John? Did you think you assaulted him?
No, clearly not. Clearly not. So by statute, the assault's defined, right?
Right.
So there's elements of the offense. None of those elements were satisfied.
Anyway.
I didn't intend to cause harm, didn't cause pain. So those elements don't exist.
Let's talk about the campaign. So write-in campaigns are tough. I interviewed earlier today the candidates for assistant judge, including the one incumbent running for another term, Kelly Goslin, and her running for her fourth 4-year term. And you might recall her first term, she did win as a write-in candidate. It can be done, but it's not the easiest. And especially you've got two of you. But how are you going about? Tell us about your campaigning.
Well, I'm using social media and going to all the meetings and getting out there and pounding the street.
Yeah, you're spending some money. I'm spending
some, yeah.
Yeah, not a lot.
Not a lot, no.
Do you think it's a winnable race
I think it's
for you?
winnable, yeah. Yeah. And what's going to happen down the road with John,
Well, it's again, I've been covering politics and doing reporting around here for almost half a century. I hate to say that, but it's certainly the most unusual, even weird. It's a very unusual situation. John, since you talked to me a while back, have you been out? Have you been more public? Have you been campaigning? Tell me about your campaign, or such as it is.
Yeah, so we've participated in a number of interviews. There was one on WCAX that I think followed our interview by a couple of days. There's been some other ones that I think are still in development, some stories that are still in development, and that will come out in the very near future.
Yeah.
Yep.
Are you campaigning at all? Are you going out, going door to door at all, doing anything like that?
I haven't started that process yet, no.
Do you intend to?
Absolutely, yep.
Again, as I said, we're taping the show on October 4th, so it's still a ways down the road, although people have ballots, and obviously some people, I guess, like to vote early. Do you think that's a good idea to send ballots out to everyone? Were you happy with that initiative for this election, that residents got ballots in the mail?
Yeah, I do. I do like that process.
Yeah.
I like that gives people an opportunity to kind of sit with their decisions. I think sometimes when, and I know that I go to the polls, sometimes you feel rushed to kind of go through and you might not know some names. You might want to have a couple of minutes to kind of contemplate it. I think it's a great opportunity for folks to sit with the potential candidates, maybe even do some research. When you look at a list of folks that you might not recognize their names, it gives you an opportunity to do a little research before you commit to a vote. Yeah. So I think that's a great process. We have a lot of snowbirds that as we were talking earlier, that relocate, and this gives them the opportunity to participate in the election cycle as well before they head south.
Gil, you thought this was a good move also?
Yeah, I think it's a good move. And did the Associated Press talk to you this week?
I'm not going to talk about who's talked to me.
No, they came down and talked to me. Said they're going to be an article put out to the Associated Press.
Everybody's been calling.
Media's giving the race some more attention.
Because what's going on with 3 candidates running for sheriff, they're going to turn it over to, he said it's going to be statewide. So
I guess, and just one more issue that's come up in the wake of what's happened is some people questioning if you're elected, certainly could be the case, given the controversy with the department, given the fact you were fired by, I guess you would say not the department itself or whatever, Lieutenant Lauer conducting the investigation. But it would seem to some people, boy, that's going to be pretty tough for John to become the sheriff of this department from which he was fired. You feel you can deal with that, and you feel you still have support in the department?
Absolutely, I do. Absolutely, I can, and absolutely, I do. Again, I've been in that organization for the last 3.5 years. Yeah. Folks have gotten to know me and know my style, know what I'm capable of, know what my morals are, where my ethical stance is on various different challenging issues. So absolutely, and they know that that I'm a supporter. You know, they know that I'm a good leader. They've seen it, they've witnessed it, and I don't question that ability to be able to resume that upon winning the election.
Sounds like that would still be a bit challenging, but you don't see that as really much of an issue.
I don't, and and I know that there's been some comments about where do the deputies feel, where's their allegiance at this point in time, and I know there's been some question about, are they choosing sides at this point in time, and I'm not aware of that being done. I don't have any evidence of that myself. When I was reminded that when Langevin was going up against Tom Oliver, the deputies came out officially and supported Tom Oliver.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, Bob Norris not running, and Tommy Oliver was Norris's key guy.
Yep. So I think it's inevitable that the folks that are still there with the person that's working there and is still there are going to be more aligned with that individual. That's self-preservation, right? So it can be very problematic if you're an employee of that organization. You come out in favor of a candidate from the outside, which I am now on the outside. But like I said, when Langevin won over Tom Oliver, the same situation happened, and there was only, other than Tom, there was only one other deputy that left. Everybody else stayed. So I'm not concerned that's even if they were on the fence about what the future looks like for them. I've demonstrated that over several years.
Yeah. Gail, you want to jump into that at all?
No, I understand. Of course, Mark's saying the same thing. He's got the deputies supporting him too, so. It's going to be interesting because everybody's fighting for survival.
It will be interesting. Yeah. Have you got some of the folks working for the department now, Franklin County Sheriff's Department, Gail, or not really?
That I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got some relatives working for the department, but I'm not mentioning their names.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, how do you think the department? Again, you're trying to be the next sheriff. Do you think the department's been run pretty well, or are there changes?
No, I think it's been run pretty well.
Yeah.
I just, like to see how the finances go.
Yeah.
Any
particular changes come to mind if you're elected sheriff?
No, I don't know. I have to look at what's going on in the sheriff's department.
Yeah.
What's the reaction? I know they got 3 officers. I'd like to know how they get paid. The lieutenants and stuff. But.
It's we talked before in the earlier interview. It's the sheriff's department's a pretty complex business. It's very different from a municipal police department that doesn't have to worry about money if voters approve the overall budget in their community. So it's a pretty complex business.
It is, and I think that's as we talked last time we were together, that people don't really understand that you really have to have a pretty high level of business acumen to be able to understand the ins and outs. And as the department's grown, as I've been there, it's more than doubled in size, and in terms of personnel and in terms of budget and things like that. So that requires a lot of moving parts, and requires a really good focus on where those monies are headed and coming. And to answer your question, I can tell you how those folks get paid.
Yeah, I know. They have to generate. They have to generate the money to get paid. They have to have a
correct,
job.
Right. So as an example, just to answer your question, that's all built into the budgets, right? It's all built into the contract proposals, and all that money is kind of allocated based on the needs of the organization.
Yeah, and staffing. It sounds like everybody's. You've had some staffing issues with the department, John.
It's actually been pretty good. That the organization has had a pretty consistent, sustained workforce when other departments have had, between 8 and 20%, attrition rates. So, we've been able to maintain that. It's not by chance. There's a lot that goes into maintaining a workforce against all of the things that we're up against these days.
Yeah.
And it's not by chance that those things happen. There's a lot that goes into it, and I know certainly I was instrumental in coming up with those changes.
Contracts, did you have enough staffing? Were there some contracts with Franklin County towns that wanted a contract with you that you could not offer services to because of a staffing issue, or not? I guess I was under the impression that there are some more towns out there that would ideally like coverage from the sheriff's department. Was that not the case?
No, we received a number of different towns would come to us from time to time and ask for support services. Not necessarily full time, like 8-hour shifts or 24/7 shift like it takes place in St. Albans town, but absolutely. And unfortunately, because we didn't have the staffing, we could not entertain those those requests at the time.
But did you turn Georgia over to Milton?
In fact, that's funny. I was about to bring up the Georgia situation. I'd say folks got some, I guess I'd call it bad ink with the Georgia situation. Again, that was the case that I guess former Sheriff Norris had negotiated a contract with Georgia.
Correct.
That went past the time after Roger Langevin took over. And again, you were obviously on the front lines of this, but I believe the sheriff tried to negotiate with Georgia and get some more money, basically saying, "Hey, under this contract, we're going to lose money."
Correct.
And again, I guess what Georgia would not agree to put more money in for that contract. So, as Gail just said, Georgia ended up going with some coverage from Milton PD.
Correct.
You feel that was the right decision? I mean, I think it just kind of looked bad. I mean, there was a contract, and you folks walked away from that contract. But again, you feel that was justified given the money situation?
Correct. Yeah, I wouldn't say we walked away from it. You know, there were a lot of negotiations that went into that before it got to the point. You know, and one of the stipulations in any of the contracts that we have states a mediation clause. So if there is ever a dispute of any kind, then both parties, you know, have already agreed to seek mediation to resolve those issues.
And did it go?
Georgia chose not to seek
really?
mediation. You know, we were all in, and we were very honest, very transparent about the rising costs. You know, that the Sheriff Norris had put in place a 5-year contract that overlapped the change to Langevin. And as we were restructuring the contract bids and trying to take the organization from the lowest 2 paying organizations in the state of Vermont to be much more competitive, then as we looked at the rising costs, fuel costs, cruiser costs, equipment costs, insurances, health benefits, you know, again, and trying to keep a competitive salary, we recognized that we needed to significantly elevate those bid arrangements and restructure that cost, and they weren't willing to meet us
and they
at the discussion table.
They wouldn't put any more money. They wouldn't go up at all and wouldn't do mediation.
Correct.
Interesting. Gail, hearing that, does that, again, do you think that was still a mistake by the Sheriff's Department?
Yeah, I think they could have worked something out, you know.
Anyway, well,
And we tried. You know, we tried.
Probably left Georgia resident with a bad taste in the mouth.
I suspect there was some feeling about that. Yeah, I don't know that, but anyway, but you feel you handled that okay?
I think we did the best that we could do under those circumstances. And I think one of the things that was challenging too, Richard, is that they were also, you know, the select board experienced a tremendous amount of turnover. So
Georgia had a lot of turnover.
So the original group of select board members with whom we negotiated, or at least started to negotiate with, changed. The folks that came in weren't having it. They weren't really as willing as the previous group of folks were to sit down and discuss the options. We very much would have liked to have maintained that in any capacity, but it couldn't be a lost money endeavor, which it was going to be a lost money.
Was that the only such contract like that? Were there any other towns that the former then Sheriff Norris had a contract with that went past the time when Roger took over? Was that the only kind of contract sticky situation like that?
That was the only one that was challenging. Okay. Yeah, that was the only one that was challenging.
Interesting. Gail, what Sheriff's Department, does it seem like Sheriff's Departments have changed? Again, you've ran for sheriff before, but
It's changed a little bit in this day and age, But didn't you guys have Highgate for a while and you lost it?
There was a contract with Highgate.
Actually, it lost under Sheriff Norris, correct?
No, it was technically, well, the timing is it's a little kind of close, but no, it was under Langevin at that contract. Yep, then they selected to go with St. Albans City PD.
Okay.
Yep.
And I guess picked up a second-year contract with City PD. I think it's been 1-year contracts.
Yep. And it's not that atypical, you know, just like the Sheriff's Office outbid St. Albans City for the town contract. You know, we've seen that before. There's some ebb and flow. There's some ebb and flow. I mean, there's, you know, different things happen where, you know, there's different opportunities that present themselves and give agencies like ours, or like, you know, the state police also does some contracts like that. They do last I knew they're doing a 4-hour contract in Georgia. So they will provide some additional services on a more dedicated basis. So there is some ebb and flow. It's not all that uncommon.
Gail, if you're elected sheriff, I assume you'd like to do as many contracts as possible. If
yes, I would. You know, and I like to see a little bit of just minorities in the sheriff's department, if at all possible.
I'm sorry, you'd like to see what?
Some minorities in the sheriff's department. I think, it's time that we get some in.
Is that an effort that's been made, John? It sounds like there are not a lot of folks clamoring to be police officers these days. But.
Well, absolutely. I mean, diversifying a workforce is always an advantage.
Sure.
And we have always looked at ways that we could better recruit folks that are from all of the different communities, whether it's the BIPOC community or if it's the LGBTQ plus community, if it's females, if it's, whatever it is, whatever that looks like. We've always looked at better ways to diversify the workforce because there's a lot of benefits that certainly can come with that. And I certainly agree that, if there's ever the opportunity to expand and to further diversify the workforce, that's always a win.
Yeah. Again, Kim, we have about four minutes left. Any issue with the Sheriff's Department that I haven't touched on that you want to talk about, Gail?
No, I don't. I really don't know what's going on in the Sheriff Department down there, but because I came from Chittenden County, so I know the working of the Chittenden County Sheriff Department.
Which are obviously a much bigger department, obviously.
Right, it was a lot much bigger.
Were you ever a deputy with Franklin County Sheriff's Department?
No, I wasn't.
Just in Chittenden County.
Back then, I couldn't work for my brother.
Interesting.
So I stayed in Chittenden.
Yeah. So what are you hearing as you're campaigning? Are people attuned to this race?
Well, everybody to my face said they're going to vote for me, but I don't know about behind my back.
Yeah.
So, I think it's going pretty good,
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's been, like I said, it's been obviously a very unusual election. John, if you're elected, a few minutes left. Changes in the department? Are changes? I mean, you're the key number 2 guy for a few years and stuff. Many changes you'd like to see, or
really,
elected?
It's I was able to champion a lot of really great innovative projects there, from the crisis response team, that we've talked about before, to technology, to incorporating innovative, creative technologies that are, that create better efficiencies for the officers, that reduce costs. That translates into being able to come up with more competitive bids when we start to look at these other towns and things like that. Really continuing to support education and training for our folks. There's a lot more that can be done there, and working very closely with the Criminal Justice Training Council to try to help streamline that process. That's a pinch point. Just the timing of when folks can get through the process and things like that. I was embarking on a number of really interesting programs to help to maintain the employees, to really focus on retention. One of which was restructuring their health insurance process and then really making better contributions to that. Restructuring their retirement. Right now, they're participants in the state retirement plan. There's not a lot of flexibility with that. So I was looking at developing a 401k program for them that would automatically give them a 4% raise right out of the gate. And then in the next 6 months after it was implemented, a 6 to 10% increase towards their benefits and compensation on top of whatever they would have already received for their annual bonus, so annual increases. So a lot of programs like that too. But I would continue to push technology. I'd continue to push resources like the crisis response team. Continue to expand that. One of the next modules was to really start to develop partnerships with substance abuse. So that was kind of the next evolution of the crisis team, working with folks at Turning Point, and have had conversations with them, solidifying better relationships and stronger relationships with NCSS to make sure that we had really good resources available to the team and we could share. The last part of that was coming up with these multidisciplinary teams that leveraged all key avenues from the community to try to participate in this. So.
Anyway, that sounds like kind of an effective closing statement there. Gail, I'll give you the last words here. I realize you're not involved right now and stuff, a little tougher to talk about. But again, why would you? Yeah, go ahead. Got about.
But I understand Tommy Oliver wants to form a union for the sheriffs. Did you hear about that?
I didn't hear about that. No.
Yeah, he's trying to unionize the deputies.
Interesting. Do you think that's a good idea?
Yeah, I think it would, because you put a lot of hours in.
Or Tommy Oliver, of course, lost a close race against Roger Langevin back in the last election.
No, I'm going out, give them my best, and if they want to vote for me, they can. And I need all the help I can get.
Anyway, I guess we'll leave it there. Again, thanks to John Grismore, again,
Thanks, Richard.
officially the one name on the ballot, Republican Democratic candidate for sheriff, Gail Messier, a write-in candidate for sheriff, and again, Mark Lauer, who for the record was invited. Early word from Mark was he would have joined us today. I'm sorry he didn't, but he certainly was invited. So again, 2 write-in candidates, Gail Messier and Mark Lauer, and John Grismore, the one candidate on the ballot.
Great.
Thanks for the time. Thanks for joining us.
No,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Richard.
Thanks
Thank you.
to Hunter and producer Alan Cunningham out there. Thanks for watching us on Northwest Access TV. I'm Richard Cowperthwait. See you next time.